cats, but with the success we've had lately with the video running, I chose not to do that. How many of you have ever taken a vacation with kids? How long does it usually take before you hear a voice in the back seat going, "Are we there yet?" Probably not very long. It probably comes just before or just after the one that says, "I got to go to the bathroom," or "I'm hungry," or "He's picking on me," or "She's touching me," or the other one in the back that's going, "I'm not touching you." Yeah, we know what those trips are like, right? I remember a few of those that our family made. And with the boys were small, and we were crammed into a Volkswagen Rabbit. If you know what those were like, they weren't very big, and the boys were seated right here. So on the bad side, you got to hear everything that they were saying and all of the fighting and all of the arguing between them. On the good side, they were merely a quick reach behind the seat. Imagine that now, multiplied by about 3 million. And you can imagine what it's like for Moses and Aaron to be leading these people on these wanderings through the desert. And as we mentioned last week, it wasn't the distance that caused them to wander for 40 years. It wasn't a 40-year venture. I mean, I think in 40 years, they probably could have made it almost around the world if they had had land to walk on. No, it wasn't really all that far. It was, as we heard, punishment, wasn't it? A lack of trust. The people had shown their disdain for God pretty much at any juncture. The pattern was kind of like this. Something would go wrong. The people would complain. God would provide. The people would be happy. The people would complain. And it was almost a never-ending cycle. And with each one that went around, each time that wheel turned again, the people's complaints got worse. And their believing that God loved them and cared for them and would nurture them and show them the way seemed to become less. Now we can, from a very comfortable 21st century position, say, well, we wouldn't have done that. That wouldn't have been us. We would have been much more open, much more receptive to God. Really? I have my doubts. I wonder. Because sometimes I think that when God is a little more out of sight, he seems to be a little more out of our minds. We are the ones who seem to keep moving away from God. And it's as though we need this constant reminder that God is going to be there. And the people there were no different. God is promising them that he's going to give them a promised land. A land that, as the Bible says, is flowing with milk and honey. Now, not literally flowing with milk and honey, but very abundant, very fruitful, very plush, easy to be able to maintain and thrive as a community of God's people. But they never can seem to get over that hump of believing that God will actually do this thing. They complain at every step of the way. They even go so far as to say, we don't trust Moses and Aaron. We don't trust that God is going to lead them. We don't trust that God is going to lead us. And so therefore, give us another leader so that we can go back to Egypt. What do you think? 3 million Israelites show up on the doorstep of Egypt after all of their chariots, all of their horses, and all of Pharaoh's men couldn't be put back together again. You think they would have been eager to see them? My guess is no. But like we always do, there's that broken, sinful human nature within us We like to romanticize what we think the past was like. We look back and we see it in much more rose-colored glasses than what actually took place. They were saying, give us meat like we had in Egypt. Do you remember the end of the story when they were in Egypt? Before they left? Pharaoh had taken away everything but a small little portion of grain. They had to find their own stubble in order to be able to make bricks. They had to do everything themselves. It was oppressive. And they were starving. And they were being beaten. But how they remember it is, we had meat in Egypt. They're not remembering they had to work so hard even just to get the grains. And so they scout out this new land. Moses sends one representative from each of the 12 tribes into the new land, into Canaan, to take a look. And they come back with a report. What they see is the land of the giants. Now, I don't know if they were literal giants. These were probably very big, very tall people. They also saw that the fruits and the vegetables and all of the grains and everything that they produced were huge. Well, if you're used to living on mere subsistence in Egypt, probably everything looks huge. At least everything that's healthy. And so they come back with a report. And the report is this. 10 of the tribes, 10 of the representatives say, it's too big. The people are too powerful. We're too weak. They've got weapons, we don't. They could withstand anything that we could throw at them. So let's not go there. Now, never mind the fact that that's exactly where God said that they were supposed to go. Never mind the fact that this is exactly where God had been leading them. They said, we can't go. But two of the 12 come back with a different report. And they say, hey, yeah, everything is as they said. The people are huge. They're well fortified. They've got all these resources. The food is great. The fruits are plentiful. And we can take them. Now, that wasn't just their ego speaking. What it was Caleb and Joshua saying, listen, if God said this is where we're supposed to go, if this is what we're supposed to do, then God is with us, and they can't stand. I don't care how many of them there are. I don't care how tall they are. I don't care how big the obstacles are. If this is where God is leading, then this is what will happen. And it doesn't take our strength to do it. Now that's kind of the lesson through all of this, isn't it? We listen, we learn, we look, we see. But very often we make our judgments based upon these two eyes instead of the eyes of our faith, the eyes of our hearts, the eyes of God that are wanting us to see through Him. What God promises, God will surely do. Now, lest we put Moses up on too high a pedestal, after all, it's Moses and Aaron against the world. Well, now they've got Joshua and Caleb. But still, there's only a few of them against millions. Moses is also getting worn down. Moses is also getting discouraged. So when the people need water, God sends him up on the hill. Says, take your staff, speak to the stone, and out of that the water will flow. Okay, that seems like a pretty good miracle. You know, if you can speak to a stone and all of a sudden water comes out. You know, they say you can't get blood from a turnip, but Moses is getting water from a stone. A miracle. God's presence. Yet Moses is so frustrated and it's so unsure. And I think it's not just frustration with the people of Israel. It's also frustration with God. God, you keep telling us you're going to lead us here. And yet here we are. I don't know how much of the grumbling I can take anymore. And the people are against us. You know, you might think, God, that they're against you, but it's us they're complaining against. So what does Moses do? He doesn't speak to the rock. He takes his staff and he strikes the rock.